That's okay. The discussions are good. And with that, Ms. Bustos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quickly, before I get to my questions, I do want to briefly echo the sentiments that many of my colleagues have shared about the horrible shooting at the school in Texas. And, obviously all of our hearts are broken. Those of us, who are moms or grandmas or dads and grandpas, there's really nothing worse than learning about these terrible incidents that we've got to do something about. That is my call to action to everybody. We've got to do something legislatively and play our role in helping to get our nation in a better place. Lots of ideas out there, but we need to take that up as well. Thank you, Chair DeLauro. Thank you to our ranking member Cole as well for holding this hearing. I know on a very personal level how important the topic of teacher shortage is. We've done a series of these rural economic roundtables across the 14 counties that I serve in this congressional district in Northwestern Illinois. And at a recent one, at every single one of them, I kid you not, on every single one of them, we heard about teacher shortages. And, obviously, when we've got something that is so important, this foundational profession of teaching, and that we're having trouble attracting and keeping educators across the country. That's why this hearing is so important. In the state of Illinois, we have about 4,100 unfilled teaching positions, paraprofessionals, other staff. So 4,100. And, so obviously we've got, there are a lot of factors that lead into that, but when you get down to it, and Randy Whitegarden, I know you know this probably as well as anybody, if not better than anybody on this Zoom. You know that we're asking a heck of a lot of our teachers and our staff while paying them too little. So we've got a bill that creates incentives for teachers to stay in the profession. One of them that I'm part of is called the Retaining Educators Takes Added Investment Now Act. We call it the Retain Act. That would give fully refundable tax credits for teachers in Title I schools. So the credits would start at $5,800 and ramp up to $11,600 to help retain staff. So Ms. Weingarten, can you talk a little bit about why incentives like those under the Retain Act are really important and maybe even essential if we're going to bring teachers into the workforce and really incentivize them to stay in the workforce?
So thank you, Congresswoman. Look, any of the kind of incentives. So let me just say, we are working on, we have a shortage task force that will present its findings, and we'll do a big focus on this as part of our convention in July. Some of what I talked about today is some of what we're bringing forward. But what you just focused on is so important, because what happens is if you have teachers are better their third year than they are their first year. Dr. Burke, I started as a lawyer before I was a teacher. I was one of those alternatively credentialed teachers. I wish I had a residency program. I was not a good teacher in my judgment my first year. I needed the support that I got from other people. And so by my third year, my fourth year, I was a much better teacher. Those retention bonuses, when people are deciding, are they going to stay in teaching or not? Teaching is a high attrition field. That kind of retention bonus is really important. That kind of retention bump is really important, because then we can keep people in the profession and they can raise a family and live in communities and teach. So that kind of work that you're doing, Congresswoman, is really important in terms of giving us the funding to be able to retain people in their third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th year.
So if we can kind of keep along these lines in my questioning, of the 14 counties that I mentioned, 11 of the 14 are very, very rural. In fact, 85% of the towns in the congressional district that I represent have 5,000 residents or fewer in the towns, and 60% or 1,000 people or fewer. And so we're seeing these shortages in rural areas in a really big way. Wondering if you have any thoughts about, are there different ways that we should tackle this problem in rural areas versus more urban settings?
Yes, there are, and we're starting to think about that. Look, you and I have had the conversation around what we did in Peoria and having that kind of housing a career tech ed facility that ended up being used for several rural counties and rural areas. You have to deal with the transportation issues and things like that, but you can then figure out how to cluster magnets together so that we have the expertise of a physics teacher or of a teacher of calculus. We've been doing that, frankly, in McDowell County, West Virginia, where we, with Gail Manchin, have been running a private-public partnership adjacent to the school district about how we make sure that we have expertise so that rural areas do not have this kind of deficit. We need to get great teachers who are deeply knowledgeable about these things.
Thank you, Ms. Weingarten. My time has expired. With that, Chairwoman Delora, I yield back. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks very, very